All right, so we are back again for another 12 days of fountain pens. Today with our great friend Andrew Chorley from Pen Friends. There you go. He's going to be presenting his wonderful work on painting his pens. He's painted many, many pens. They are wonderfully beautiful. We have been sponsored by Robert Oster, who's just sent us his ink, Robert Arthur Citrus. This is the first release, so it's released here on 12 Days of Fountain Pens. It's only going to be available to the rest of the world next year, so if you want to have a taste of this ink before anyone else, please send an email to 12 Days of Fountain Pens at bmed.io. I'm going to post it on the chat in a minute, and you enter the draw for this ink. We also need to thank the great Dennis from Dan's Pens for donating this pen for the prizes. It's part of the prizes of the quiz that's going to happen on the last day of 12 Days of Fountain Pens. And there is also a pen that was donated by Steph from Gramia Pens, which is the Lalex 1938, and it's a sterling silver pen, wonderful, super beautiful, and it's also part of the 12 Days of Fountain Pen quiz give up prizes. And Izods is gonna be donating a pen for us, and I just need to decide which one is going to be donated with Roy. We just need to, make sure we get a nice one. Okay. So without further delays, let's go with Andrew and his wonderful, wonderful pens. Can you unmute yourself, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Brilliant.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining me on a midday. Apologies that it's not at the usual schedule of 9 p.m. However, trying to paint pens at night is something which is quite complex. It's just that you do need relatively good light, and my eyesight isn't the best in the world. So thank you for joining me at 12:30 today. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of an origin story to how I got into fountain pens, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the processes and some of the challenges which I've faced, and then I'm going to do a live painting session later on in which you can ask questions, hopefully at the same time. I will have to get Bernardo to kindly field those questions as the chat on the screen isn't particularly big, and I don't really want to be switching between those. However, I will be switching between the camera from the front screen, which you can see me on now, to the rear camera as and when I start doing the painting. Okay, so how did I get into fountain pens? Well, I've always had an interest in art right from the get-go, and I was interested in fountain pens in school. I had a Parker Jotter, and it was a great fountain pen, thoroughly enjoyed it. Got through school, got into college, and then started veering into more computer-aided design. And then I got myself a job as a graphic designer, loved that, but again, still no fountain pens. And it wasn't really until last year that I started becoming interested once again. And that was partly like a two-prong approach. We've had a change of stance in my day job where you're not allowed to use a mobile phone in the workplace. So therefore, communication had to be done via written hand or via desktop computers. So I was looking for a fine writing instrument back then. And also I'd recently got into doing sort of pointillism at that time, which is basically doing like lots of little dots. And I was using fine liners. However, that really wasn't fulfilling my sort of interest, partly from two points. First point is that I was constantly capping, uncapping, changing pens to get different graded nibs, and it was an unfulfilling sort of experience doing that. I had experience working within the art department in our school using dip pens, and I thought that might be something fun to explore. But the issue with that was that I didn't really enjoy having to constantly dip the pen. So I thought, okay, what else could I be using? Well, fountain pens came into my mind, and I thought, yeah, okay, so let's start looking down the fountain pen route. And yeah, it grabbed me pretty quickly. And what was quite interesting from the get-go was how unknowledgeable I was about fountain pens. It was just like, I saw a pen for £20 and I thought that was really expensive. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll go for that. All right, so I did. I went for myself for a Lamy Safari and I loved it, absolutely loved it. And the fact that it gave me the opportunity to get a little bit of expression, I could actually even reverse write with it. And then I thought, hang on, this is great. So what else can fountain pens do? And then I started discovering flex nibs and all these other wonderful grinds, which Jose has done wonderfully showcasing this week. So then I thought, okay, this is great, but I want something a little bit more unique. And I started hunting around and I came across a company called Phoenix Lacquer Art, which you may or may not be aware of. Now, Phoenix Lacquer Art is, I believe, a Dutch company, but they hire Russian miniature artists to do paintings. And the paintings were absolutely spellbinding. They were beautiful. They were works of art on a pen. And I thought, this is great. How much are they? £8,000. Yeah, there was no way I was going to be able to afford £8,000 for a fountain pen. That was completely out of my hemisphere for a budget. And I thought, okay, well, I've got artistic skills. Why don't I have a go at doing it myself? So that is how I really got into doing it. And here I am today. So what I'll do, I'll showcase a few of my pens next, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges which I've faced. And then I'm going to give you some audience participation in terms of what you would like to potentially see out of two choices. So somewhere I have got my first fountain pen, and I think I've maybe picked it up first time. Yes. So this was my original pen which I bought, which is a Lamy Safari. And I thought, yeah, I'd have a go at doing that. And it turned out okay, to the point that I managed to get paint on there and I got the pen completed. Now, if any of you ever decide to paint a Lamy Safari, don't do the cap. Please, please do not do the cap, because I spent countless nights umming and ahhing. How do I remove this blasted clip? And eventually, I reached out to Steph at Grandmere Pens and the wonderful community here on the Fountain Pen UK group. And people gave me some comments and suggestions. Now, you'd think, if I can, there we go. You would think that this would unscrew. Now, on the older generations, they did, and you could gain access to the clip to take it out. But oh no, you can't do that. You have to take the actual cap off, then stick a like a screwdriver or a skewer in there and actually push it out. And that actually, surprisingly, wasn't too complex. Putting it back together, however, was a different story altogether. So in the end, to cut a long story short, I superglued it in. I didn't feel proud of doing it because it just felt like I was cheating, and it was a little bit messy. And even now, the finial isn't really on there particularly good. And I know, having spoken to a few other people who have done Lamy Safaris, you know, their advice right from the get-go was don't do it. But you know what? I thought I knew better than that. I'm going to have a go at doing it. And I did it. And I then realized why people don't actually enjoy doing it. So I am not doing caps anymore for Lamy Safaris. So that is one of the main challenges which I faced to start with. Other challenges I've faced and are still going forwards is actually lacquering them. I have yet to find a decent lacquer to actually do that. However, I have had some really good suggestions, and as and when I can afford it, I will be investing in some lacquer and a spray gun. So, right, let's show off some of the pens which I've got to start with. Mr. Super Clear, I haven't come across that, but I will envisage to have a look at a few other things. So I'll show you the pen which I'm probably most proud of, and then I'll show you my first pen, which I did a first serious painting on. So again, it's another Lamy Safari, and hopefully you can see this. And this is sakura petals, which are gently cascading off a spring tree. Hopefully that is picking up and the focus is okay. And I've just used a clear coat Rust-Oleum matte finish on this, and it's really good. You know, for a matte Lamy Safari, it's a brilliant finish. So this is what I'm going to be using for the time being. So I'm really happy with that. Now, the challenges with this one is really outlining all the details. And this is going to be one of the options which you can see being painted today. The first pen, however, which I did a semi-serious painting on, was this one here, which is wheat fields with poppies. Hello, Simon. So yeah, this one I was really happy with. I've did the whole pen. I've got the clouds in there. I've got the landscape going on in the bottom of it, and yeah, it's a beautiful pen. I'm really happy with this. So yeah, using the matte finish was great. Oh yeah, yeah, the classic, holding it up like that. Yeah, there we go. Hopefully that is coming up for you. Moving on from that, I then started experimenting with gloss finishes from the same company, but it's still not fully cured. But there we go. This again is, I could do that, except for I can't see properly, but hopefully you can see that. This is again, another summer scene. Better? Perfect. I'm only viewing this on a very small screen at the moment, so consequently, it's hard to see what I'm looking at. But anyway, this is a tractor field with landscapes in the background. And I do have pictures of these on the Facebook group as well, which I will try and hunt down the link and then post in the show notes, so to speak. So next up, I then started looking at other pens. And the next one which came up was a Twisty Go. Now, the one thing which really surprised me about the Twisty Go was when you actually spray paint it, how much of a bigger pen it actually truly looks. So I have got another Twisty around somewhere, which I'll try and hunt out. And again, this is Sakura Petals, a little bit larger. And this has been an experimentation pen. By that, what I mean is I've tried other techniques in terms of protecting it, not so much in terms of the techniques, with the exception, if I just hold this up again, of the branches on there. So I've just tried doing really ultra fine detail. That's a good question. How do I hold it? Usually just by the cap. Is it simply put, or I will put it on the barrel. And I've also got this excellent frog tape, which was recommended to me. So if you are having a go at doing this yourself, I would certainly recommend this as really good masking tape. And you can use this to basically protect areas from when it's being sprayed, and it is absolutely fantastic. And you can do all sorts of creative things with this as well. So later on, I'll talk about some ideas of what you could do if you're actually going to have a go at doing this yourself. So it's a really accessible way of getting into customizing fountain pens. Right, so okay, so that's some of the challenges. I've really enjoyed the experience of actually painting on fountain pens. It's a wonderful freeing experience. And if you love a limited edition pen or a pen which is customized, but you can't necessarily afford to go and do it, go to someone and actually get them commissioned to do it, have a go at doing it yourself. The Rust-Oleum matte finish, if you're happy with a matte finish on your pen, isn't terribly expensive. And you can be, you know, relatively creative with it as well. Somewhere around here, I have got some other things which we could have a look at. Yeah, here we go. So you don't have to paint detailed patterns. So we have got this gold and red Twisty barrel, which I did, and that's just simply brush strokes, not too dissimilar to some of the Urushi techniques which you can see out there. And it's just a really nice sort of way to actually relax and have something a little bit more unique than the generic pen which may be presented to you. Right, so we have now got one last pen to show, and then I will get on with the painting itself. So this is my most recent one, which is foxgloves with a bee, which hopefully you can see. Hopefully the light is pretty good there. And this was done on a Ranger Giant 9B. So inexpensive pen. I paid around about £50 for the pen. And it's ebonite, and it's probably one of the biggest pens which you can actually get. I think this even dwarfs the Namiki Emperor, which is saying something, because that's an oversized pen already. Being ebonite, it's slightly porous, which means that if you get this unpolished, paint just sort of seeps into it, and protecting it is a lot easier as well. It's the preferred material as well for a lot of Russian macro paintings. So from Phoenix Lacquer Art, artist pens, I believe they all use ebonite bodies for that reason. Okay, so the pen which we're going to be doing today is another Lamy Safari, and I have pre-primed it. Yes, I do. I do paint it white to start with, and I use, again, a Rust-Oleum primer. I bought that primarily because it was quite cheap for the amount you get. But if you really want a good quality one, the Humbrol primers are absolutely fantastic. The only issue is you just don't get a lot for your money. Right, so the options we've got for today is a purple sunset scene with a seascape, or you can have a sakura petal. So I'll just give you a few seconds to sort of think about that, and then just give me what your responses are. So we've got 1 for sunset, 2 for sunset. Okay, we'll just give sakura. So that's 2 to 2. We just need one deciding one. So, oh, sunset. So, okay, so we're going to do a sunset today. Thanks for your feedback. I will probably do another demonstration again in the future if you so wish. And you can also see maybe some live demonstrations on my YouTube channel as well. But we'll do the sunset today. So what do you need to use on a painted fountain pen? Well, clearly you need a pen. You're going to need to have some form of a palette. I have got one of my sort of night plates here, which just gives me a nice little surface area. Now, typically speaking, lots of people use water to make the paint go a little bit longer. You can do that, but I use something called fluid retarder, I should say. And what that does, it slows down the drying process for acrylic paints. Now, acrylic paints are beautiful, but the one issue which you have with acrylic paints is they dry ultra quick. And you need something to slow down that drying process. And then lastly, what do you need? You need some paints. Now, there are lots of different paints which you can use for painting on fountain pens. We've got acrylic paints here, which is what we're going to be using today. And you can also use oil paints, surprisingly enough. I've not tried experimenting with that myself. And you can also use egg tempera paint, which is probably the oldest form of paint, certainly that I know of. It dates back to Iron Age. You'd use egg whites to mix in with powders like ochres, and you would then build up your colours that way. And that's still going today. I will answer your questions in about 5 minutes. We'll take a break from the actual painting, and then I'll go back to it, and we'll just do intermittent question times, and I'll let Bernardo know when I'm ready. So we're going to do a sunset today on here. So I'm going to switch to my other camera now. Let's switch. Hopefully you can see the desk okay. I'm just going to have to tilt that down. So what I'm going to do, even though that this pen is already primed, what you have to do is you really need to actually start off with white. Okay, now it does make sense because paints do come with a varying degree of opacity. Blues and reds are pretty good, but when you start getting into things like yellows and certain blues, especially teals, they can start having translucency, which can be a good thing and it can also be a bad thing. But as we need that opaqueness level, we're going to start off with white, and then we're going to start mixing in some colours. So let's just move that so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so we've got some titanium white here, and this is Winsor & Newton Galleria. And then we're going to mix in a purple. So I'm going to go for a cadmium red hue, and we're also going to go for a Winsor & Newton blue. So a bit of red. And what we're going to do, we're going to start off really light, and then we'll start working into some darker shades as well. And I might try to do this in a more impressionistic style, because that, for a time restraint, is a much better style to work in. So by that, what I mean is, if you're familiar with the artists of Vincent van Gogh or Monet, anything within that style where the brush strokes are sort of more loosely placed down, that's what we're going to be doing today. So what I'm going to do to start with, I'm going to uncap, take off the section, and then I am going to just literally hold the actual barrel like this. Now, because I'm not going to be going all the way down initially, by the time it gets to the point where I'm ready to do that, I am actually going to be able to flip it upside down, because acrylic paints dry really quickly, and they actually dry quite hard as well. So brushes, what brushes do we use? Well, we've got a number of size brushes which we can have a look at. I'm just going to flip to my front camera to show these in better detail. So we've got a fill bit brush, which is this one here. There we go. Which is like a flat brush, which is really nice. And then we've got more detailed brushes. This is a #1 size brush. And then we've got miniature brushes here as well. I bought these and they were extremely cheap. But what I like about them is that they've got a triangular grip, like so, which makes for holding the brush really comfortable. The only issue I've had with these is that the actual hairs start fraying. Yeah, riggers, they're really good. The issue I have with Western brushes, certainly for the style which I'm more accustomed to for painting on a fountain pen, is they're really soft. If you have a look at the Maquis brushes, which they use in Japan for their urushi paintings, they use, I think, human hair, I believe. And I don't suppose they, they go around actually cutting off people's hair or anything crazy like that. But they use human hair. I guess they go to like local barbers and they collect the off cuttings. Yes, I know that sounds gross, but what it does give you is a very stiff brush. And when you're trying to do detail, and I'm sure that you'll probably have noticed this yourself, if you've got an ultra soft nib on a fountain pen, what happens is that the tines will start spreading and you can't start writing in a normal fashion. It's really designed for a specific task, and that's the same really when it comes to painting. Is these aren't really designed for that task ahead, but there are ways around it. So what we're going to do to start with, we are going to start off with our filbert brush, and I'm going to get myself a little bit of retarder. Now, you're not supposed to go over 50% with this, with mix, because it will never truly set, but a little goes a long way. And then what we'll do is we're going to start getting a little on the brush, like so. And this is going to be a little bit awkward because I've never done a demonstration like this before, but we're just going to gently coat the actual barrel with white. And anyone who's worried about textures of the paint, don't worry about it, because when you start lacquering it, that builds up texture, well, sort of infills the texture, and then you can start sanding it and you end up with something which is quite nice. So the other colours we're actually going to use today is a little bit of cadmium yellow, because obviously when you get a sunset, you typically have a lot of yellow in the sky. Okay. Now, one little disclaimer, I have not done a purple sunset before, but that's okay. I am always up for a challenge, no matter how silly it makes me look later on. All right, so I'm just keep brushing, and then I'm going to get just the tiniest bit of yellow, and then I'm going to mark out where the actual horizon point is going to go. So let's just bring that a little bit closer to the camera so you guys can see. So I'm going to go about a third down. And because we got that white on there, I'm getting that opaqueness with the yellow, which you just wouldn't normally get. And I'm just going to go around the barrel, like so. And then we're just going to get rid of any of those little bits of dried up acrylic. Now I do actually have a reference photo which I can work from for this, so I will be referring to that one in a minute. And I'm just going to feather that up like so. Wonderful. Okay, so what we can now start doing is getting a little bit of red into the scene. A little, again, goes a long way, and because we've still got that yellow base, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get the majority of it off onto the palette, and then we're just going to gently brush it in. As you can see, it makes a massive impact. Just a little. There's hardly any on the brush. And I might actually have to start putting some Bob Ross happy little clouds into here as well, going down the line. Everyone loves a happy little cloud. I mean, if a cloud's not happy, are you truly happy? Probably not. So what we can then start doing, and what I love about actually painting clouds, is that we're going to have it slightly darker at the bottom, and then it's going to start feathering as we go to the top. And then we're going to repeat that with the yellows, and it's going to get darker towards the top of the scene. And then we'll start working in the purples. Now, granted, it won't look much like a sunset just yet, but it will get there. You just have to have time and faith. And we're just going to keep going up, like so. Just a little bit of red. Beautiful. And there we go. We're starting to get some of that cloud formation in there. Now, if you are ever interested in getting into fountain pen painting, certainly studying art or paintings is a really good way to getting into it. You really want to have a nice sort of focal point. And in a moment, what I'll do is I'll take this to the window where we've got more direct light over the actual top of the pen, so you can see it. So if you look at people like Turner, who was a master of painting landscapes with light, and in a quite impressionistic style, they're really bright and vibrant sort of focal points of light in there, and that's really what you're trying to achieve in a painting. And then we're just going to start getting more of that yellow in there and bringing it up. Wonderful. And again, you don't want to always feather, okay? What you want to try and do is bring it in gradually and then just build up the drama, so to speak. There we go. Starting to get into some artistic speak now. Yes, I do paint other than pens. I do portraits. I prefer drawing, and it's really, that's what I use fountain pens for, is more drawing. I really want to just do a little bit more calligraphy, but it's not something which I'm particularly brilliant at just yet. But, you know, like everything else, it just takes a little bit of time. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few paintings of mine on the wall, which I am more than happy to share. Right, I'm now starting to feel a little bit of resistance, but I'm going to just take the phone, hopefully, gingerly off the tripod, and we'll try to actually, oh, I don't know, you can see that, can't you? Just about. There will be better pictures of this on the Facebook group at the end of this video. Right, so we've got a really good sort of base now for the actual pen. I'm just going to let this dry for a few seconds. So if you have got any directed questions, I'm happy to field some for 5 minutes, and then we'll get back to doing some painting again.
Cool. So I wrote down 2 questions that you missed. Was first of all, does the sakura have any significance for you?
Not a particular significance. It's just like, you know, in life you have an attraction to something. It's inexplicable. I'm a photographer. That's how I actually got into actually a lot of my artistic fields was through photography and exploring light and such forth. And there's something about sakura trees which creates a wonderful glow when you're actually taking portraits. Having a sakura tree in the background is really nice. You can get almost like a reflective light off the trees, and they really are absolutely fantastic. I just find the actual petals just mesmerizing. It's something very calming about sakura trees, and I used to watch quite a lot of martial art films, Japanese martial art films, and they always seem to feature in there. There's something beautiful about this sort of the chaos of the fight versus the tranquility and the calmness of the actual trees. So yeah, that's really my sort of fascination to them. And living in the countryside, I've always had an appreciation of nature.
Do you sand off the texture?
Yes, I do. Not always. It's just dependent on the pen. The Lamis, which I'm doing, certainly on the matte finishes or the 2020 editions, they're actually quite textured. So they take the actual, they take the paint, the priming paint, perfectly fine. I used to do it, but I didn't actually find that it really made too much of a difference. But if you were doing something on, say, like a textured barrel, sorry, a non-textured barrel, then yes, definitely sand it so that you've got a surface to work on.
Cool. Does anyone else have a question? Raise your hand, like the way, you know. There you go, Ryan.
Hello.
Hello, Ryan.
How you doing?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
My camera's really close. There we go. I wanted to know, can you put pictures of all of the pens that you've shown us today up on?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, I'll do a collaborative photo of that, and then I'll post that onto the Facebook group later on.
Nice. Thank you. And can you let us know what your YouTube channel is? I've had a quick search, but I can't find it.
It's just Pen Friends on YouTube.
Okay,
and
cool.
I do have a few videos which are referencing some of these pens as well, but sometimes it's quite nice to be able to have a face-to-face on this so that people have got directed questions. You've got my full attention.
Nice.
Let me just bring that from my face. You're welcome.
Okay. So next question is from Dan. Go on, Dan. Mute yourself.
Hiya.
Hello.
Just a quickie. Do you ever mix mica powders in with your paint when you're painting?
Sorry, what powders?
Mica powder. They give a pearlescent shimmery sort of.
No, but I have got something here which I almost forgot to show earlier. And it is Goldfinger, which is used for gilding, and it's fantastic. The pen, which I'll put a picture of this on later on, but the actual base of this was done with Goldfinger. It's not something which I'm opposed to doing, and going down the line, I will be exploring doing Urushi work in the future.
Okay.
So I will obviously be sprinkling gold dust or silver dust onto pens then.
Okay. Well, I'll speak to you afterwards.
Okay.
There's things that I use in blank making that I think would be useful for you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Dan.
No problem.
Cool. Jose?
Andrew, great.
Hello. Very well.
Really
Yourself?
like seeing you paint. Do you usually do right now? I think you were doing wet on wet with.
I am, yes.
And for the landscapes and the sakura, do you usually do that, or do you build up layers?
It's dependent. There is a Dutch technique where you have essentially 7 layers of paint, I can't name all the layers off the top of my head, but the more prominent ones is you start off with an umber layer, and then you overpaint it. And this is all in oil paints. And then you start building up from top of that with a light and dark shade. Now, what's really nice about this technique is that you then end up by tinting the actual artwork. So essentially you're using a very sort of watered down oil paint to actually go over that light and dark layer. And that's how you build up, like, say, like the translucencies of skin. If you try, there's no reason why you can't just, you know, go in with the colors straight away. But the way the Dutch masters did it to be able to get that sort of evanescent glow on skin was through that technique of just building up in layers. And you can sort of do it as well with using acrylic paint. Luminosity, there we go. Thank you. I can do words, just about. So this was done again with a similar technique. I started off with light colors and then started tinting it up. And it's a really nice way of doing it because you get a really nice sort of gentle finish to the actual pen, almost like a watercolor. So yeah, it's a really nice technique, and one which I certainly do use on the landscape on this one here. Hopefully you can see that. I used that sort of tinting technique for some of the grasses in the foreground, just so that you get that sort of impression of translucency going through the actual blades of grass.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. Any more questions? No? Okay.
No, perfect.
Yeah.
Right, so what I'll do is I'll go back to painting, and then we will crack on. Okay, so we've had time now for the paint to dry a little bit. And then what we'll do is start defining the sky a little bit more into the pen. Hopefully the video is picking up on this a little bit. So let's just get some of that yellow going and oranges. And we're going to just tint in just up towards the top, like so. Just to get some of that vibrancy of the sky. And I'm just going to leave it at this point here, which I will point to with the end of the brush, because this is where the sunset's going to be. So I'm going to leave that purposely. And then again, what we'll do is we're going to work around just building up. And then we'll start working in the purples further up in the sky and on some of the horizon points underneath the clouds. Wonderful. Yeah, I'm quite happy with how that's turning out. Superb. Don't forget to do the tops. Right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to get our purples going. A little, just a tiny little bit of blue. Trust me, blue is a really strong color, and you can kill a color. Just look at how dark that's going. Hopefully you can see that. I'll just bring it a little bit closer so you can see. Just at this point here. So that's possibly a little bit too dark. So I'm just going to lighten it a little bit. And just get a tiny bit of white in, just to help us. And then I'm going to apply this a little bit at the top. I'm just going to test it to get the strength and make sure that I'm happy with that. Yeah, that's okay. And then I'm going to start defining some of these clouds a little bit. And I'm just feathering it. So feathering technique is just gently bringing the actual paint up and down. And this is almost like a dry technique. But what this will do, it will add quite a lot of depth to the painting. And we'll just keep building that up at the top. And then we'll do the same underneath, just brushing that in. Like so. And a little goes a long way, as you can see. And as this is being done in an impressionistic technique, I'm not overly worried too much about detail at this stage. So we're going to get a little bit of white in there, a little bit of that fluid retarder, just to wet it a little bit. And then at the top, we're just going to be a little bit more bold with the actual colours. Now, this pen will be actually sent off to Cassandra, if I didn't mention before, because for whatever reason, someone stole the contents of the package from the recent competition which I did. So this is a dedicated pen just for her, as I felt so bad that she didn't receive the pen. So Cassandra, I know you're not watching now, but I hope you will enjoy this pen. Okay, so yeah, we're looking really good here. Now, the nice thing about doing seascapes is it's almost reflective, to the point that I could actually do this sky again and then start doing vertical strokes to give the impression of the sea. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put this onto a pencil, if I can find one to hand. Yep. And then I'm going to get myself a little bit of masking tape and then just mask it from one side, so I've got a little bit of grip. And then I just like holding the barrel. There's no reason why you shouldn't have to do this there from the beginning, but I just like having the tactile feeling of actually holding the product in my hand, and it works for me. So let's just get some masking tape off.
1 second, Andrew. So just a reminder, send an email for the giveaway for the ink, and we have 10 minutes, okay?
Gosh, how time goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do enter, guys. It's a fantastic competition, and having seen the actual green ink, it is absolutely beautiful. And I'm not a green ink person, but my goodness, it is a beautiful ink. So Bernardo, thank you so much for doing that collaboration. Okay, so we're now going to start working on the water. So whether we actually get this pen finished today is unlikely, but what we will be able to get is hopefully for you guys an impression of some of the stages which I go through. Hopefully next year, if we do this again and Bernardo is kind enough to host me, I will be able to show you some of the finishing techniques of what I actually do. That's, of course, if people are interested. Okay. So we're just going to be quite liberal here at this point. Now, I know seawater is typically blue, but this is one of the main mistakes which you make as an artist, is you assume colours rather than see colours, which can be fatal. So I'm just going to bring that up. And we're just going to try and create a flat horizon going around. It's okay if some of it goes up, because you can obviously get like the sea crashing and so on and so forth. And to be honest, I'm so new to this, it's still a journey for me. And sometimes journeys are the most exciting aspect. So yeah, it'd be quite interesting for myself, from my perspective, just to see what this will be like in a year's time, see what I've ventured into. Because if I can, really get the lacquering techniques down to fine arts, I'll be certainly a lot more confident about selling pens. Now, unfortunately, the lacquer which I'd used on a previous pen, which I'd done for a client, it peeled in the post. It had actually, what I thought had set, but it had peeled. And oh my God, I was having kittens. So yeah, it's like jumping into the deep end, painting fountain pens when it comes to techniques which you're not necessarily familiar with, but it's certainly one which I would recommend you guys having a go at doing. Right, so we've got a focal point here. We've got quite a lot of light, and here, but what we're going to do is we're now going to start building in some of the lightness of the water from the reflection of the sunset. And that's just going to feather out like so. And what we'll also do is we're going to add a few rocks in here just to give the actual sunset a little bit of interest. So again, a little bit more light, and you'll be quite surprised at, you know, how big this brush is for such a small pen. But when you're doing this technique, that's perfectly okay. You know, it's a really nice accessible method into painting fountain pens, and just bringing that down and then graduating it down to the bottom, like so. Right, so we're not done with the sea yet by any stretches of the means, but what we are now going to start doing is defining some of the actual rocks. I have got some water here which I can clean off the brush, but what we are going to have to do is switch out the brushes. So what we'll do is we are going to start going in with a detailed brush, and we're going to keep with the purple hues by mixing in blue and red. And because we are going into sunset, these rocks will be silhouetted. But what you will also get is obviously the spray from the ocean waters. Now, I'm being quite free with this today, but I'd certainly recommend, if this is the first time you're doing it, I will get a bit of paper in a moment and I'll wrap it around the barrel, and then I'll give you some ideas of what you can potentially do. So I'm just going to put in a few rocks, just to give an idea, and then I'll add in shadow from the water as well. Oh, that's good that we got another artist in the room. It's when I tell people that I paint fountain pens, they mean, oh, do you mean you paint with fountain pens? No, I say, no, I'm actually painting on the fountain pen, and they're often quite surprised. To be honest, I'm quite surprised myself that I'm doing this. If you'd asked 6-year-old me, will you ever be painting on fountain pens? I'd be thinking, you're crazy. You're going into space, man. That's what you're doing. But I'm not in space. I'm painting on fountain pens and loving it. So we've got a few rocks in here. I'm going to let that dry off, and then I'm going to complete that with a little bit more fine detail later on. I'm going to show you some ideas of how to actually start getting on with planning painting fountain pens, and then I'll do a few questions, and then I expect it'll be about time to announce today's winner of the Robert Oster ink. So what we're going to do to start with, I'm going to get another fountain pen, which is completed. I'll get my Sakura one, just because it's my favorite. And then what we're going to do is, I've got some sheets of paper here. And simply, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap the barrel around like so. And then we are going to get a pencil. Actually, no, we'll use a fountain pen as we're a fountain pen group. And then I am going to mark approximately how much space we've got to work with. So if you can see that mark there, that gives you approximately the actual circumference of the barrel, and that will also give you an idea of what you can paint. Now, a few things to bear in mind if you are going to consider doing this yourself. You need to understand that you need to create a 360-degree panoramic. So by that, what I mean is, if I just put the palette to one side for a second, whatever you draw, so if we're going to have a horizon point here, it needs to match up. So we can't have, hopefully you guys can see this, you can't have a horizon point which ends up like so, because what you'll end up with is a seam. So you just need to build up whatever you're going to do. So we'll just put in some rocks. just very quickly, and then we'll put in an idea for the sun. Okay, so whatever you do, it just needs to wrap around the body. One thing which I noticed very quickly when doing my field landscape on this pen, which I'll just bring up. In fact, let me just switch the camera. The horizon point almost didn't match up. So this is loosely based on a, thank you. This is loosely based on a village scene, just from a field about 100 meters from here. And because I take it from a photograph, what you'll end up with is, like I say, a seam going down the edge. So you have to have some sort of artistic license to whatever you do. And what I did for that was I started adding in various bits of interest, like some poppies in the foreground. And as I said earlier, I will be putting a picture of these up as well. And then I'll try and also do a 360-degree picture of this one, so you can see that from all sides. Anyway, that really brings me to the end of what I'm talking about today. Hopefully we are close to that hour mark. So if you have got any further questions, please feel free to ask, and I will try my best to answer.
Cool. We have 5 minutes to 10 minutes maximum, if I can stretch. I'm going to try to stretch this 5-10 minutes. For answering questions, raise your hand if you want to ask a question. But you have already the winners of today, so can you please announce them for us, Andrew?
Of course. Let me just bring up my iPad. You sent it as a direct message, didn't you?
Yes. I sent you previous messages. Please don't read them.
I've got that. Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Right, so once again, thank you, Bernardo, for hosting me today. And thank you so much for those who have come on a more obscure time zone for today's talk. So
thank you for dedicating time for us.
Yeah, the winners for today is Philip Masters, Lucas Street, and Amir Abdul Qayyum. I can't pronounce that last part, but congratulations to you. If you can email Bernardo with the email address which has been put into chat with your name, Bernardo will try his utmost best to get those inks out to you soon. So congratulations, and thank you once again.
Yes, congratulations. Okay, there you go. Another question from Dennis. Go on, mate. You can ask a question. Unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, again.
Hello, Dan, again.
I saw you have mostly posted floral images on the pens. I just wondered, do you stick to that sort of style, or do you do other sorts of
I try to stick within a remit of what I'm comfortable doing. I am trying to branch out into doing more sort of intricate designs. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Phoenix Lacquer Art, I will post a link to the works which they produce in the post, which I'm going to put onto the Facebook group with my pens. But the detail which they go into is just, it's way above and beyond my sort of skill set, but it's something to aspire to. I think as long as you're happy doing what you're doing, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, so on this pen where I've started putting in these really fine brush marks here for branches, this is basically just a way of experimenting with that finer detail. Now, what just completely blows my mind is that when you start looking at the makie art of Japanese urushi artists, when they start doing their raised technique, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but they are literally painting over the same marks every 2 or 3 weeks or every month, and they're just building it up and building it up. And if you've ever tried to, going over your same line, it's actually really, really hard to actually get that precision time and time and time again. And to be able to not only just do that, produce that on, say, a limited edition of 10, 100 pens, it takes so much time and concentration to do that. That's why you are sort of presented with the prices which you are. One of my sort of main sort of sources of inspiration was Ryan Cusack, who actually does, again, acrylic paints on fountain pens. And his work is fantastic. It's absolutely beautiful. The brush works, which he does, especially on the tigers. I believe he worked with, what's the name of the company? It'll come back to me. They did the LB6. Bernardo?
The LB6 is from, it's on top of a Sailor King of Pens.
It's basically, I forget the company's name, but he did a collaborative project. Classic Pens, thank you, Simon.
Classic Pens.
Yeah, yes. Classic Pens. They do art pieces as well. And there was a bald eagle, which Ryan had produced, and it was just sublime. It was really beautiful. But what really inspired me was the fact that his work isn't necessarily 100% perfect, not like some of the Russian lacquer artists, but it was a source of sort of inspiration to show that you can actually produce something which people enjoy and not have to go to the sort of the depths of what perhaps some of these other masters are doing around the world. And it just really goes to show that, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Right, we're gonna have to wrap it up.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you very, very much, Andrew, for dedicating your time to us. Thanks our sponsors, and remember, tomorrow we're back at 9 p.m. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Perfect. Take care. Bye all.